5 weeks after my last visit with my daughter Kim and my lover Mark, I was still euphoric from that meeting. Mark and I called each other every other day and had phone sex several times. Unfortunately, I was unable to visit our daughter at this time due to their work commitments, but we have already planned a longer weekend from Thursday to Sunday in the next 2-3 weeks. On Monday, my daughter called and said her next semester must be paid within the next week or she will have to leave college. I said I would talk to her father. When my husband returned home late that evening, I asked him why our daughter's college funds had not been paid yet. He looked me in the eyes for a few seconds and said that he would not pay for a disrespectful daughter who stabs him in the back. Stunned, I asked him what he meant. He simply said that he had learned that his daughter did not respect her father and, perhaps even more, did not like him. That's why he decided not to pay for her studies, but I can pay for her from my account. Since it was already late in the evening, I decided to call my daughter the next day, but when I tried to talk to my husband about it, he said that he had said everything that needed to be said. I went to bed angry at him. The next day, I called my daughter and told her what her father told me. She had no idea why her father thought she didn't love him anymore. She said she always loved him, but I could hear the sadness in her voice. I told her that I would take care of money for school, but she should talk to her father. When I went online to our accounts, I discovered that most of the money in the accounts was missing. I couldn't find out where the money went. I started getting angry at my husband again and waited for him to come home. Immediately as soon as he walked in, I asked him where all our money was and how I should pay for our daughter. "Well," he said, "I withdrew my money. The money that is in joint accounts is for ongoing payments on your house and your car. If you don't have enough, then find a job. As for paying for our daughter's education, maybe one of your lovers can pay for it. Although I don't think your college lovers will have enough money, maybe you can charge them for your services. Or your regular lover will give you money." My legs gave way from shock, and I had to sit down. "What do you mean? I have no lovers?" I said as convincingly as possible. I felt like I was torn apart and didn't know what else to say. I had no idea that he knew about my extramarital sex. My husband started to get angry. "Oh, come on. I know about your constant lover. I also know about your college lover, Mark, and I know about all the college boys there you had sex with the encouragement of my ungrateful daughter. I also know that you and her shared a boyfriend." I cried because I saw the collapse of my marriage. "Sorry, it was just sex," I whispered between sobs. "Just sex? Then tell me, when was the last time you had sex with me, and when did we make love?" I could not answer this question truthfully. He continued. "The last time you had sex with me was a week after your first visit to college, and it was just a pathetic sight when you lay there with your eyes closed and I did all the work. That's when I realized something was terribly wrong in our marriage. As for making love, it was so long ago that even I don't remember. I understand that you didn't have time or need me between all that phone sex with Mark and your regular lover. Yes, I have it all on video and audio. I just sat there like a deer in headlights. I didn't realize that I had neglected my husband and marriage for so long. I looked into his eyes and saw how hurt he was. What a terrible wife I was. It's not like I had any interest in having sex with you after your adventures. Who knows what STDs you have now? And our daughter even encouraged you to not care about our marriage. She hasn't spoken to me once since she moved into the dorm. She even ignored my messages a few weeks ago. Now you know why I won't pay for her studies. She needs to find a job. Maybe she can do the same dirty things her mom did. Maybe together you can earn enough to pay for college." He said this with pain and anger. I just sat and cried. Now I'm going to sleep. Over the last couple of days, I've moved most of my stuff into the guest room. I'm not surprised you didn't even notice. I'll sleep there because I don't see any need to pretend. I sat there for a long time, or at least, it seemed like a very long time. Then I called my daughter, although it was already late. But I needed to talk to someone, and I had to tell her about our problems. Without any greetings, I just cried on the phone. "Kim, your father knows. Your father knows about Mark, about all the sex that was there. He even knows about my lover here, and he knows about your participation. That's why he won't pay for your studies." "Oh, damn, Mom. How does he know? Do Do you also have a lover at home? Damn. What about Mark? What will happen now? And who will pay for college? We hurt him. We both hurt him a lot, and I don't know if our marriage will survive. He said hurtful things about both of us, and honestly, I can't blame him. I don't know where he hid most of our money, but now I can't talk to him about it. I have to let him cool down and remain obedient. Maybe I can save our marriage, but I wouldn't bet on it at the moment. I'm not sure you should call him right now. He told me that you have been neglecting him since you moved into the dorm and even ignored his messages. So please remain calm. Yeah, and tell Mark not to call me. I can't see him or any of the other guys anymore, and I don't think your boyfriend Bob will ever be welcome here. My life is falling apart. There is no other word for it. I had everything. A loving husband who provided for both my daughter and me in every way. He made enough money that I didn't have to go back to work after our daughter Kim was born. We weren't rich, but we had a comfortable life with a nice house, and I didn't have to worry about money. Okay, sometimes I had to argue with my husband, but most of the time I got my way. We had a varied sex life, but it has dwindled over the past few years because my husband has been promoted several times and has had to work late more often than not. Perhaps it was for this reason that I was vulnerable to the advances of my longtime lover, Billy. With my high libido, I thought I could have a lover without hurting my husband. I thought I could have my cake and eat it too, and my husband wouldn't suffer from it. It would even improve our love life. How stupid it sounds now. Then the time came when our daughter moved to college, and I visited her there for 2 weekends. The first weekend I met Mark at a fraternity party I attended with my daughter. I spent time in bed with him, and my daughter even appreciated it. This was followed by 4 weeks of phone sex with Mark. During this time, I also met Billy, but did not tell him about Mark or my weekend. What I didn't realize was that I was completely neglecting my husband. On my second visit to college, I met Mark again and had sex with him and about a dozen of his friends over the course of an entire weekend. My daughter knew everything and was happy for me, and we both did not think about my husband, her father. We were endlessly selfish. Another 5 weeks after my second weekend, my life fell apart. My husband stopped paying for college and told me he knew about my lover. But my fall did not end there. I spent the rest of the week in a fog. I called my daughter several times and we cried together. I can honestly say that I never wanted to hurt my husband. I just didn't think what would happen if my husband found out. Today I realized that I was living in my own fantasy world where I could have everything. My daughter said she was coming home for the weekend and we should sit down and talk to him. I wasn't sure if it would help me, but maybe it could repair her relationship with her father. Mark called once after that, but I turned him off. Even Billy, whom I usually met 2 times a week, did not cross my mind. He texted me several times asking to come over, but I once told him that I had problems that needed to be resolved, and I would contact him later. My husband didn't come home in the evenings. At first I thought he was having sex with other women, but then I saw sports clothes in the basket. I remembered that I had seen this before, but did not think about it then. Well, that shows where my mind was. Then the weekend came. Kim arrived on Friday afternoon and we talked. I even told her about Billy, the only secret I kept from her. When my husband came late in the evening, my daughter ran up to him, hugged him, and shouted several times, "Sorry!" He just patted her on the back and said, "We'll talk in the morning," and went to the guest room. I know this indifference hurt her, but she said she understood. After a sleepless night, we met in the morning at our dining table. After looking at my daughter and me for a few seconds, he simply said, "Who wants to start talking? What can you both say about this mess?" My daughter and I had discussed this the night before and thought it would be best if she acted as a mediator, despite her role in it. Dad, first, I want to say that I'm sorry that we caused you such pain. We both, Mom and I, truly love you, and that has never changed. We know that our actions show something different. My husband just grumbled but didn't say anything, so my daughter continued. You know that I have always been my mother's best friend, and not just a child. She shared a lot of her life with me, so I also know a lot about your marriage. Yes, we even talked about sex and your sex life. At these words, my husband looked at me in surprise and anger. I couldn't look him in the eye for long, so I looked down at my hands. I remembered what I had told my daughter over the past few years, and it didn't paint a good picture of my life with my husband, worse than it actually was. My daughter continued, "My mother told me that your sex life has suffered for many years. You started working longer and were often tired. I know she started using toys because she didn't want to put pressure on you. I didn't know she had an affair with Billy years ago. Last week, she told me that she started exploring her sexuality with him in order to improve your sex life together. Until then, she spoke in a normal voice, but looked at me accusingly. But looking back, I never saw any improvement. At least she didn't tell me. She always told me that she was sexually unsatisfied and didn't get any attention from you. This was the main reason I agreed to her fling with Mark during her first visit. I thought it would satisfy her needs in the long run and wouldn't hurt you in any way. I knew that she communicated with him over the next weeks, and I even knew that she wanted to meet him again. However, I didn't know how intense their calls and conversations were. I found out about this after talking with Mark. Yes, I convinced her to meet him again the second weekend she came to college. This wasn't supposed to be a long-term romance. I knew she had sex with more than just Mark, but I just thought it wouldn't hurt anyone if she let her hair down all weekend. At these words, she lowered her eyes and blushed, but continued. Yes, I let her have sex with Mime Guy, my grandfather. Somehow this seemed like a normal connection between my mother and me. After she finished, we sat in silence and thought about what she had said. I started crying and realized that a miracle was needed to save the marriage. After a long pause, my husband turned to me and coldly asked if I would like to add anything by way of explanation. I couldn't speak, so I just shook my head. He waited a few more seconds to see if I would change my mind. Then he leaned back and determined my future. Let's sum it up. My wife started her long-term affair because I had to work long hours to feed my family. She didn't want to talk to me about it because she didn't want to hurt me. Instead, she had sex with other men thinking it wouldn't hurt me. She wanted to explore her sexuality by having an affair with Mark instead of talking to me. She even had sex with her daughter's boyfriend to get closer to her. When he said it like that, it sounded really terrible. I leaned back in shame and let my tears flow, but I didn't think for a second that they would have any effect on him. After a while, he spoke again, addressing his daughter. Let's clear something up. Your mother had a good job before she became pregnant with you. Don't get me wrong. The pregnancy was planned and I always wanted children. It was for this reason that we moved to this bigger house for all the children we had planned, even when I argued that this house was too big. But she countered that she would return to work after the planned children went to school and contribute to the household. I sat there in tears and remembered this time, the time when we were happy. It's true, I wanted this big house to fill it with children, and I really wanted to go back to work. After you were born, she stayed at home and took care of you. After a few years, I wanted more children, but your mother decided that one was enough and that she didn't want any more. I never pushed her to do more because I thought it was her decision at the end of the day. When you started school, she also decided that she didn't want to go back to work and would focus on you growing up. At first, it was okay because I was earning enough to live a good life. There was just a small problem. Now we had a big house that I had to pay for, and your mother didn't go back to work. On its own, this wouldn't be such a problem because I'm good at my job and make good money. However, since your mother stayed at home, she had to fill her free time, especially after you started school. Oh God, I knew where this was going. I never realized how bad it is. Her hobbies eventually began to cost a lot of money. I don't want to explain what your mother spent our money on. I don't want to repeat her visits to the beauty salon every other week for several $100s, or her shoes, purses, and dresses, which she has used maybe once in all these years. And I don't want to mention her new car, which she had to replace every 3 or 4 years. With all the extras, of course. Oh, she even spent some of the money I earned on her lover. While I received a gift certificate for Christmas, her lover received an expensive watch with a personalized engraving. At these words, my daughter looked at me in surprise. This was also something I didn't tell her. I felt even more ashamed. You may wonder why I didn't say anything. Actually, I said something from the beginning. I had several conversations about money with your mother, but I kept them away from you. She always promised to cut her expenses. Well, it lasted a few weeks, and then she started spending again. After a few years, I stopped discussing it, but I had to work longer hours to finance your mother. And of course, you. I don't need to tell you what hobbies you've tried over the years, and I'm sure you have no idea how much they cost. Your mother always wanted the best of the best for you. Over the past few years, 70% of our money has gone to you and your mother. With the remaining 30%, I paid my expenses and maintained our nest. Your mother once accused me of spending $150 on a tennis racket while she spent $400 on a new bag in the same week. And I'd really like to see your mom in all the lingerie she bought from Victoria's Secret or Agent Provocateur, but that seems to be reserved for lovers. My God, I thought, how much he knows. I've never seen everything so bad. I never knew about our financial situation. The money was simply there and could be spent. When I bought sexy lingerie, I kind of thought about my husband, but I never wore it for him, even when he asked me to. He interrupted my train of thought by continuing. So, my dear daughter, you will understand that money doesn't grow on trees. I had to work for it, and I had to work long hours to bring in extra money. I like my job, so it wasn't a big problem for me. Of course, my long hours of work had to affect our sex life. After working 10 or more hours a day, I don't have the strength to caress your mother for a long time before starting the main part. Don't get me wrong, I love foreplay, but I don't always have the energy for it. Hearing about our sex life, my daughter started blushing. She wasn't ready to talk about sex with her father, even though she had started it herself. Oh, come on, my dear daughter, there's no reason to blush. If you talked to your mother about our sex life, you should have known all this. Did your mother tell you that we had a fairly active sex life at the beginning of our marriage? We did this often, sometimes several times a day. This, of course, decreased after you were born, which suited me. But one thing your mother has never been, at least to me, is truly adventurous. She was basically a passive partner and let me do all the work. Introducing new ideas wasn't really appreciated, so I stopped trying 10 years ago. And yes, plain vanilla sex has completely diminished. Hearing it from him like that, I wanted to object, but I couldn't. Everything he said was true. He tried to be more adventurous and try new things, but I refused. I didn't want to be considered depraved. What a joke this is now. How my lover or frat boys saw me didn't matter to me, so I was willing to do things I wouldn't do with my husband. So, my dear daughter, blaming me for our poor sex life and using that as an excuse does not work. Did your mom tell me anything? No. Has she ever introduced new sexual practices? No. Did she ever agree to the new things I introduced? Hardly ever. About 90% of our sexual intercourse took place with me as the active partner, with your mother lying on her back. So don't tell me it's my fault. The last tirades became louder and louder, and I leaned back more and more. He took a few deep breaths and continued more calmly. I don't know what you both expect from me, but there will be changes in all of our lives. You can think about your future until tomorrow. Then I will decide what will happen next. With these words, he looked at us for several seconds, which seemed like hours. Then he stood up and left the room. Half an hour later, he came down with a small sports bag and said that he would return late in the evening, and we did not need to wait for him with dinner. Kim and I sat at the table, looking at each other, but lost in our own thoughts. I have always considered myself a person of high morals and a high sense of family. But when I came face to face with the truth, I suddenly saw myself for who I really was. Selfish, cheating bitch. Self-awareness is the first step to self-improvement, but damn, it hurts. But what hurt the most was that I hurt my husband. For some reason, I didn't feel sorry for myself. Not a bit. But I felt sorry for my husband and my daughter. How and especially when did I lose my morals? I had to decide this for myself, regardless of whether my marriage would last or not. I don't want to go into detail, but as I talked to my daughter the rest of the day, I knew our relationship had deteriorated. She didn't openly blame me, but I could tell from her language and tone that she was blaming me for portraying her father as a bad person. She wanted to improve her relationship with her father, and I thought she had a great chance. I will help her in any way I can. However, I didn't know if my marriage was mortally wounded or if it could be saved. I knew things would never be the same again, and I had to make a lot of concessions. I knew I loved my husband, even though my actions didn't show it. And I knew that I respected my warm-hearted husband for everything he did for us. I never allowed anyone to seriously scold him. I have to take the blame, take responsibility for my actions, and start giving without expecting anything. The next Sunday morning started the same as the day before. My daughter and I were sitting at the table when my husband arrived. Before any of them could speak, I said, "Please let me begin before I lose my courage." They both looked at me in surprise, and when they did not object, I continued, "My dear husband, I'm sorry that I hurt you so much. I don't know when I lost my way, but please believe me when I say I've always loved you. Be sure that nothing you did or didn't do was the cause. The blame lies entirely with me. I don't know why I did this, but I intend to find out with professional help. I know that now you are unhappy with our daughter, but please understand that she is a victim just like you. A victim of my selfishness and the lies that I told her, and the lies in the form of my suppression of important facts. With the last sentences, they looked at me with big eyes. I don't think they expected anything like this at all. Before losing my composure, I continued, "Even if you don't want to see me again, please make peace with our daughter. She needs you as a responsible father to get her back on the right path. She needs you much more than me, at least for now. I know I have no right to ask, but if you find it in your heart to give me a second chance, I will do anything to earn it. I know you will never forget what I did, but I hope that you can forgive me someday in the future. If you move on without me in order to be happy with someone else, you will forgive me at least so that you can be happy." With the last sentence, I lost my composure and ran upstairs to the bedroom. I wasn't going to say that last sentence because I didn't want to think about life without him. But right at that moment, all I wanted was for him to be happy with whoever he was. It took me 15 minutes to calm down, and I went downstairs. "I'm really sorry," I said as I sat down again. Everyone seemed lost in thought, but then my husband straightened up. "I thank you for your confession. I didn't expect it to be so serious." After a few seconds, he continued, "I don't want to beat around the bush. I have already consulted with a divorce lawyer." With this revelation, I sat back in my chair. I knew my marriage was over, and all I had to do was wait to be served. I knew I wouldn't resist. I almost missed what he said next. Unfortunately, the laws in this state are not really in my favor when it comes to divorce. After considering all the options with a lawyer, we came to the conclusion that it was cheaper to leave you here. I looked up with surprise and hope on my face. He looked into my eyes, but in his eyes, of course, there was resentment. But this was the first time I had any faint hope of saving my marriage. But I knew it would be a long journey, and I'm ready to take it. Of course, there will be serious changes. First, I canceled all your credit cards. You will both receive debit cards into which I will deposit a small but appropriate amount each week. With this money, you must pay for groceries and some personal expenses. I know you need to seriously adjust your spending, but this time, I'll be the one to decide. Financial difficulties did not scare me so much, although I knew that I would have to adapt. I'm used to having money when I want. I'll have to get out of the habit. But the most important thing is your infidelity. You know that you hurt me, and even though you told me that you never lost respect for me, I feel insulted. I hope you don't expect physical affection in the foreseeable future, because touching you doesn't appeal to me at the moment. This hurt me very deeply. It felt like a slap in the face. I always wanted to look good, and it was important for me to know that men wanted me. But now the man I truly loved didn't want me, didn't even want to touch me, and it shocked me. But when I felt my face turn pale, I realized that it wasn't my body itself that made me unattractive. This was what I did with my body. I allowed other men to use it when only my husband should be allowed to use it. At that moment, I myself felt dirty. Not only my body, my soul also felt dirty. I knew that I had to cleanse my body and soul of deception and selfishness. One more note. I expect you to receive a clean bill of health. I know you've had unprotected sex with guys and I don't want to risk it. At these words, my face turned red with shame. With all my lust, I did not think about my health, much less the health of my loved ones. I would commit suicide if I gave my husband several STDs. This may be the hardest part for you, but I don't want to abstain from sex. In recent years, we had less, and then only boring sex. We have already talked about the reasons. However, you had a lot of adventurous sex with your lover. So now I have a hall pass for the future. I won't just have sex with any woman, but if I find someone worth it, I will have sex with her without regret. I won't flaunt it in front of you, and it won't be someone from our circle of friends. It is advisable that it be some stranger. I'll keep it a secret, but I'll tell you if you want to know. Oh my God, he intends to cheat. Several feelings came flooding back. Anger, pain, hatred, humiliation. With this last feeling, I suddenly understood how he felt when he found out about my deception. It didn't make me feel any better, but I knew I had no right to complain. I just leaned back. Of course, if you want to continue this marriage, you must remain faithful. Otherwise, I will divorce you. I can't stand any more disrespect. Maybe I should have sex with your lover's girlfriends? But, as far as I know, only 3 have permanent girlfriends. He looked at Kim again. Bob has a girlfriend, but I'm not sure I want to have sex with my own daughter. Kim looked at him with wide eyes. And your longtime lover, Billy? Well, he doesn't have a regular girlfriend, but he does have 2 other married women that he dates regularly. You're not his only woman. He's a player who loves married women and cuckolding their husbands. There is at least one marriage that failed because of him about 2 years ago. This was something new. I didn't think much about Billy or what he did when I wasn't with him. There was no love on my part, only carnal lust. These are the rules for the future. If you can't live with them, you'll have to file for divorce yourself. With these words, he stood up and left us sitting. There was a long silence as we considered what we were faced with. The only problem for me was the realization that my husband could be cheating on me. But what choice did I really have? I could get good compensation in a divorce, but at what cost? I love my husband and don't want to lose him. I knew that I had to make myself desirable to him, body and especially soul. I had to return it. We barely spoke for the rest of Sunday. Kim left for her college on Sunday evening. I didn't know what surprises the next few days would bring me. On Monday evening, a worried Kim called. She said Mark's fraternity was having a party this weekend. There, one of the girls, who was very drunk, was raped by several guys. She reported the rape. That same day, someone called the police and reported a major drug operation at this particular fraternity. A drug raid at the fraternity house uncovered many different types of drugs, date rape drugs, and videos of various encounters on the fraternity brothers' computers and cell phones. It was Mark's fraternity, and according to Kim, a lot of drugs were found in his room as well. I looked at my husband and saw the corners of his mouth turn up. I had a feeling that he knew about all this before. Maybe he arranged it all. When I asked him, he simply told me that he would never organize the rape of an innocent girl. It was just a coincidence and the icing on the cake. The college has closed this fraternity, and its members will face difficult times. Their future careers do not look so good. On Thursday, I received another unexpected call. Child porn was found on Billy's office computer, and further investigation revealed several videos of him with various married women. There were no videos of me, but since I was one of his frequent contacts, they interviewed me. My husband supported me during the investigation, and a few days later, I was acquitted. A few weeks later, Billy called me from prison. He asked me if it was my husband who planted the child porn since all my videos were missing. I didn't even know they existed. He received an anonymous letter that said, "You shouldn't have sex with married women." I didn't ask, but I knew that my husband had a hand in this. I know he has a friend who is great at IT security. I just hoped this friend hadn't seen my videos. Since I knew that he had taken revenge on my lovers, I just waited for the axe to fall on me. I'm happy. I'm still married to my husband, and I love him more than ever. Of course, it was a difficult year. I immediately went to a psychologist to understand myself. A full medical examination. Yes, I also received a clean bill of health, revealed a hormonal imbalance that could have started a long time ago, apparently shortly after my pregnancy, and I began treatment. Psychologically, I was diagnosed with a mild form of shopping addiction. These things, combined with a high libido and less time with my husband, may have led to my cheating. I could give this as an excuse, but deep down I knew that the decisions about cheating were made by me. I made sure my husband knew all of this, but I never presented it as an excuse, and I made sure my husband knew it too. A few weeks later, I found a job in my field at a small startup. My boss is a woman, I don't want any misunderstanding with my husband, who was cheated on by her husband. I told her everything about myself, and at first she was very strict with me. But she saw how much I wanted to become a better woman, so gradually we became good friends. The work doesn't pay that much money, but it brings satisfaction. My husband told me that I could keep the money, but I would deposit it into his account. I live on his debit, which he increased over the last year, but I never used it completely, except when I bought him something as a gift. My daughter rebuilt her relationship with her father, and they are closer than ever. My own relationship with my husband took longer to improve. Just a few weeks later, one of my friends mentioned that my husband had become a real stud. He reduced his working hours and started working out. Within a few months, he became very fit. Several of her college friends visited our daughter over the summer. They seemed to flirt with him more than was necessary, and he enjoyed their attention. Was I really jealous? Of course. But surprisingly, what's more, I was proud that he was attractive to young women. Did he sleep with any of them? I don't know, and I don't want to know. After all, he had a hall pass. It took 3 months before he came back into our bedroom, and another 3 months before we started having sex again. This happened when I surprised him in the bathroom. He fought back. I told him he didn't have to fight himself off. He can use my body however he wants. He doesn't have to make love to me. He can just have sex for his own pleasure. This was the first night of intimacy. I knew that this was his way of venting his anger, and I accepted it without complaint. This was how our sex was, and I even enjoyed it. But I missed making love. A few weeks later, we went out to dinner with friends. When we returned, we were both pretty tipsy and made love for the first time. The ambassador, I cried, clung to him and said thank you several times. With this, we became real husband and wife again. Our daughter felt it immediately when she visited us and was happy for us. A year later, we went out to dinner together. After dinner, he told me he was canceling his own hall pass. If I want to know something about what happened during this time, then I have the last opportunity to ask, and he will answer. After this evening, he would never say anything about it again. I thought about it for a minute and then simply said, I don't want to know anything about the past, but I ask that in the future, whatever happens, happens between us. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.